Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted business strategy. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the podcast especially for women in their 40s and beyond who know that business and personal development go hand in hand. Tune in each week for marketing, mindset, and personal growth strategies, along with inspiring stories from women around the world who are creating new businesses and lives that are personally fulfilling and financially rewarding. If you're looking to create a business and life you love, you're in great company. Let's find out what will unfold in your next chapter. I'm your host, Angela Rasmus, and I'm so delighted that you're here.
Hello there and welcome to episode 14 of the Your Next Chapter podcast. This is Angela Rasmus. Now, I was thinking just before I was starting to record the introduction for this week's episode about how almost every week I find myself saying how excited and delighted I am about the interview that I'm about to share with you. And that, perhaps sounds a bit repetitive, but what I realize is that it's really, really true. Now, I think I'm incredibly privileged to get to have these wholehearted conversations with these amazing women that I'm discovering are out there really making things happen from the heart in their next chapters. And so the idea that every week I get to deliver this type of content to you so that hopefully you're feeling inspired and supported and ready to take great leaps forward in your own chapter. And just the thought of you hearing something that lights you up and does make you feel that you can go out there and own your impact and make a difference with a little bit more clarity and confidence, well, that really makes all these hours that go into pulling a podcast together so darn good. I feel fabulous about it. So I just wanted to let you know that, yes, I am excited and delighted again this week, but for very good reason. Now, today we're getting to talk with Kerry Jeffery. And Kerry is quite a remarkable woman. Now, she's got a background in psychology and clinical hypnotherapy and life coaching, and she's really an expert in emotional healing. She's got a really unique and powerful blend of therapy that completely transforms the lives of the women that she works with. Now, she does some really important work in the world. She's helping people overcome trauma, toxic parent relationships, and the fears and beliefs that can really get you stuck in self-doubt. And we all know that can hit us, especially when we're moving into new territory in our next chapters. Now, she couples her practical experience with a really strong sense of intuition and knowledge, and she's helped so many people overcome shame and insecurity and anxiety. And most importantly, she's empowering them with support and skills that they need to actually become their authentic selves. And so the conversation that we were having on this particular episode was started from a really interesting premise, like looking at Kerry's own next chapter and how she gave herself permission to let go of the things she thought she should be doing and instead really design the life that she wanted. Is it easy? She's a single mum? No, it's not. Is it worthwhile? Abso-freaking-lutely. But a really interesting point that came up that we dwelled on for a wee while was the fact that as entrepreneurial women today, we didn't have any role models or molds to follow. In most cases, our mums and our grandmums didn't do the things that we're doing. Now, I know in my case, when I was leaving school, the choices that I had were far, far more limited than they are today. Now, I'm not getting on the pity train here at all. It's just a case in point that we did not have the role models saying, hey, you can do this. You can go out there and create your own business. So Kerry and I really discussed why that could contribute to holding us back a little bit. Now, she talks about the solid emotional foundation that you need to build to really back yourself so that you can take your work out there into the world. And one of the most important pieces of that is an absolute commitment to no self-bullying. You've really got to be literally your own best friend. Now, we also dive a lot into body image. This is an area that Kerry works on a fair bit. And we touch on mirror work. So if you're feeling a bit crappy about yourself some days, mirror work is almost magical in the way that it can bring you out of that low self-regard. And I'm a big believer in self-worth needing to be at the core of everything you do in your next chapter. If you've got that core of self-worth, anything becomes possible. Now, as always, there's a fabulous resource that comes along with this episode, and this one is the communication formula that Kerry has provided us with, how to communicate and negotiate very effectively, where you take 100% responsibility in your relationships of business and life. It's a great tool that I'd love you to download and utilize almost every day, I reckon. So to get hold of that resource, you simply go to angelarasmus.com/14. That's the number 14, 14, and the word download, and then you'll be able to download your own version of the communication formula to help you move forward. But that's enough from me. Let's dive into this wholehearted conversation that Kerry and I had. I hope you enjoy it.
Well, hello, Kerry, and thank you so much for spending your time with me here today. I've been really looking forward to this conversation, and I appreciate you putting your diary time aside so that you can chat with us.
Oh, thanks, Angela. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you and be here.
And we've had many conversations over the time that we've had the chance to get to know each other, and it's just a joy for me to be able to share the type of work that you're doing in the world, which is so important with the audience here, with the Next Chapter women who are listening today. And with your specialty in being an expert in emotional healing, some people might say to me, well, why is this important to business? But to me, business and personal development are so utterly entwined. If we have some emotions or some issues or some things that are holding us back from the past, it makes it very difficult for us to expand into our full potential in our business and life. And that's the reason I want to have this conversation. Would you agree with that in the work that you've found with the people that you are taking care of?
Oh, absolutely, Angela. I've done quite a bit of work with entrepreneurs who, are really wanting to put their work out there, and they just find that they just feel so blocked from some things that are coming up from the past. So, they have a lack of confidence. They've had somebody, maybe putting them down. They've maybe had a toxic family relationship. So all of those, little traumas and emotional issues can really stop you from getting out there and being confident in the world.
I totally agree with that. And what I've found with so many women that I've spoken to, and in fact a survey that I did last year, which found out when I was asking women, now what is the thing that you would say is holding you back from expanding, from really getting that success that you're looking for, that you're craving? And I wondered, was it going to be I don't have the skills, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the time? But what it actually was it's me. I'm the one who's holding me back. And so it really is that confidence, that self-belief in your ability to make things happen. So this is why it's such an important subject to talk about. So can I ask, with, the wholehearted nature of your work, you're certainly someone who has written new chapters in your life. Can you talk to us as a beginning of how your own business direction has come about in this next chapter with doing the work that you do today?
Absolutely. I used to work in quite a high-level position in a university, and back in 2009, quite a lot of things happened in my life, and the major one of that was that my mother passed away quite suddenly. And I think particularly as a woman, when your mother dies, it really gets you to have a look at your life and what you want to do. And, I realised that my mother's life was quite unfulfilled. There was a lot of things that she didn't have the opportunity to do. And, there I was getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and getting home at 6 o'clock, single mother, having the weekend off and just getting up to do it all over again. And I'd always wanted to work with people, like always, since I was a kid. I think I was the person everybody came to with their issues. And I just decided then it was time. So I don't recommend the way that I did it. The way that I did it was I just gave notice and quit my job and took a massive leap into the unknown. And I'd done some work with Louise Hay's beautiful Heal Your Life work. I became a trainer for that. And so that was the idea, that I was going to go out and do some sort of coaching, and had no other plan. Ended up doing readings and tarot cards and things, which I'm also very good at, but it really wasn't what I wanted to do, because I found that when I was doing the readings of the cards for people, I actually wanted them to say to them, stop looking at the cards, come and work with me. Let's really get this stuff over and done with, and so that you can get on with your life. So it's gradually morphed from there. I added in hypnotherapy, did some training in that. And I think my own journeys have sort of changed the way that I work. And probably the main thing that I know a lot of your listeners will relate to and have an issue with this is actually getting over that whole label of having to be an expert in a specific field. Like, I trained in psychology, but I wasn't a psychologist. I trained in hypnotherapy, but I don't like the way traditional hypnotherapy models itself. I've always wanted to do my own thing. So finding your own niche and really being able to stand up and say, I do it this way, and it's my way, and it's unique, and that's why it's different. That's the biggest block that a lot of us have. And that's what's really clicked into place for me probably in the last 12 months.
That's so valuable to hear, because I completely agree with you. A lot of us, and this overall, I've read about this, about how, and look, I love men, so these next words are not to be taken in that respect. I'm married, I have sons, so I love men. But what we find is that guys tend to be more likely to just have the confidence to step forward and go, you know what, I'm about 75% qualified for that. I'm putting my hand up. Where women can be 99.9% qualified for something and still hold back until they get it absolutely right. That feeling that we're not quite up to scratch, or the imposter syndrome is quite often known. And so that point of giving yourself permission to do it your way, that is the core of being an entrepreneur. So I'm delighted that you've brought that up.
Yes, it's a huge one, a really, really huge one. And I think, often we define ourselves by what we're not rather than what we are.
Oh, that's a tweetable, as some people would say.
Feel free.
So that concept also is that, as we can hear, from 2009 to 2016, when we're talking today, it's been a winding road. I doubt that when you started back in 2009, when you took that leap, that you could have imagined exactly where you'd be today. So it's that reassurance that we need to give ourselves as well, that we might not be able to see exactly where the path is going, but having the trust and following our instincts, and getting the strategies in place that we need to support them. But would it be fair to say that you were following your heart and the things that interested and called you as you moved forward?
Yes, absolutely. It's always been my passion, as I said, to work with people and help them to do that. And I think also, when you take a leap like I did, you've got to be practical about it. It's not all going to come in the first 12 months, and often not even in the first 3 years. I give myself full permission, even now, if I need to take part-time work or if I need to do something else to support myself, I do that. It doesn't devalue what I do. And I find a lot of people, particularly when I see clients, it's almost as if they feel they're giving up on their dream and they're turning their back on it. But it's not. You've really got to be practical about it and say, I need a source of income to fuel my passion, and just keep building slowly. So honestly, I'm still in the process of doing that.
That's another important thing to acknowledge, and I love the openness of that. That's a concept that I've embraced as well. When I made the move from my own marketing agency back in 2012, I think it was the end, when I just went, I can't do this anymore. That straight business to business, die hard strategy. I needed the heart side as well. But when I did close that business and move into this new area, I had what I call a couple of investor clients. So clients that were straight marketing clients, but I'd had for quite a while, and I really enjoyed them, even though it wasn't the work that I really felt that I was evolving into. But having them, they're almost like a bit of a backup for me. They allowed me to do the work in the world that I was really passionate about, whilst I established that new client base, that new direction. So I love that. That did not devalue what I was creating, what I was doing, as you just said, not at all. But I gave myself permission to keep holding on to that part of my previous chapter, so that I could write a far richer, in terms of fulfillment, new chapter. So I think that's so important for everyone who's listening to know. I love the way you described that. It did not devalue at all what you were creating. It gives you the base to keep expanding.
Yes, and I mean, a lot of what we do as entrepreneurs or service providers or any of those sorts of things, it's often very different to what our mothers did and our grandmothers did. So there's no mould for it. You've got to create your own. And that can be the really hard thing to do. And that's why a lot of people hold back with those fears, because you literally are stepping into the unknown.
Take a big deep breath and make the leap.
Yes.
Well, I love on your own website you have some great messages and philosophies which I've always felt very, very resonant with, and because to me these are very much at the essence of a next chapter business. To me a next chapter business is very much leveraging your life experiences, recognizing the journey, sharing what you've overcome or you've learned or you've expanded into so that you can help shorten the road for another person. So I'd really love for us to dive into some of these pieces of the quotes and for you to share the thoughts behind them. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait.
Yay. Well, the first one that I found was, when you begin to love yourself and heal yourself, you change the world. That just feels delicious. Talk to me about the thoughts behind that.
So that's really where it all comes back to. So many of us are looking for something outside of ourselves to fill the hole that we have inside, or give us the confidence, or, give us the reassurance, or give us the validation, or the approval, all of those different sorts of things. And while it's outside you, it's never certain. Anything could happen to take that away. And so what I say to my clients is, when you do this inner work of learning to sort of love yourself and approve of yourself and know that you are enough, it's like an inoculation or a vaccination against the crappy things that happen in the world. Like, it doesn't stop them from happening. I think a lot of people wrongly think, I'll eventually get to this point where I'll just love myself so much and, I'll be so confident and all of these things that nothing will ever upset me again. And that's totally unrealistic. What actually happens is that you still fall down, but when you get back up, you've got all these fabulous tools to use along the way. And it doesn't get back to taking away from you. You don't blame yourself. You don't think it was because you're not enough. You don't think it was because it's anything to do with you. It means you can actually look at the situation and say, okay, what can I learn from that? Without needing to attack yourself or feel guilty or feel resentful of any of those things. So once you build that solid emotional foundation, you can start to create your life the way you want to create it. And the funny thing that happens, Angela, is not only do you change, but every single person you interact with will be changed by you. And I know that sounds like a big statement to say, but what always happens when my clients start doing this work is they come back to me and say, I don't know what's happening, Kerry, but everybody's being so nice to me, and the children are behaving better and I'm getting on better at work and I feel more confident. And I'm like, yeah, what do you think's changed? It's you. So your whole energy changes, the way you relate to people changes. And, the ripple effect is that you can change the lives of people that you have no idea that you've changed. It might be a post you put on Facebook. It might be the person you smiled at the street, It could be something you said to someone years ago that could profoundly change their life. And most of the time we help people, we don't even know that we're doing it.
That is so true. There's that, that whole, if a butterfly flaps its wings over here, there's a tsunami over there. There's a couple of things that come up as I'm hearing you say that. Yeah, that beautiful quote, I think it was Gandhi who said, be the change you want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
It has to start with you. You need to be that first step in change. And I love that idea that when you start making those changes yourself, you start seeing the world through a different lens. Therefore, you're showing up differently, and therefore that impact, that energy that you bring to every situation is going to change as well. So this is that example where it really entwines, because the way you are showing up personally will have an impact on your business. I know,
absolutely.
I know for sure when I've felt more confident and more certain that is hugely client attractive. When I'm more at peace with myself, when I have that center of calm certainty, that really assists my clients as well. And you've actually, I've just got to share one other thing as well, if I may, that I have a meetup here in Sydney, and I had some women come to it late last year, and there was a lady there who I didn't recognise, and she actually shared her story in this meetup that she had heard me speak at an event a couple of years prior, and she'd been in the audience. I spoke to a load of mums at a private school up here in Sydney about making choices to honour yourself and etc. etc. To cut a long story short, I put a challenge out that day for go and do the thing that's really calling you. And it was from a self-worth perspective, but entwined with business. Well, that lady sitting in the room there took that up. She went out and she actually created a whole business. She sells beautiful, beautiful elixirs, aromatherapy products, and she brought me a sample. And that was just that little scenario where I'd played this tiny role of being a catalyst in the whole process, that she would then did all the work and, brought it all to life. But I had no idea that just showing up and having that little message that day could have made that change in someone. And I certainly couldn't have done that without having that sense of value and worth that I've been working on for years. So that was a magic moment for me, and I just wanted to share that because I have no doubt with yourself and with everyone who's listening right now is that you have done things in your life that you may not necessarily see the positive impact on another person, but it definitely happens without a doubt.
For sure. What a great story, Angela. And that must have felt so fantastic to you to have someone come up and say, wow, you changed my life.
It was definitely one of those happy dance moments. One of those moments when with establishing and growing a business, it's not easy. Let's be honest. As you just acknowledged, you don't try and build Rome in a day. It takes us time, and there's times when it's really challenging, but then there are those magical moments, and more of them turn up where it really confirms for you why we're doing the work in the world that we are. And those magic moments make it all worthwhile, don't they?
They sure do.
So another point that you have is when you have the courage to be who you truly are, you inspire others to do the same, which really leads on from there. But there's probably more behind that statement that you could share with us.
I came up with that one. I mean, that's certainly nothing original. There's nothing really original out there. But that, from a child, I've always been drawn to people who were absolutely, authentically, wholeheartedly themselves, warts and all. And I think particularly as women, we always try and define ourselves by what we think other people want from us, or, to sort of try and work out what do they want or please them, or all of those different sorts of things. We don't really show who we are. We're always on guard. And when you are authentically yourself, you laugh when you want to laugh, you speak how you want to speak, you say your truth, all of those different sorts of things, it brings in that amazing and courageous vulnerability. And vulnerability is so attractive, it's so real, it's so authentic. And the minute you start becoming who you really are, you're magnetic because there's nobody out there like you.
That's a vital thing for us to understand, isn't it? Because it's that uniqueness that of just being the essence of you, that's when you will attract to you your people, whether that be in a friend sense, in a relationship sense, in a client sense. If we put a mask on and pretend to be someone that we aren't, then you can't have those authentic relationships, can you?
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, a lot of women go into relationships being authentic, and then the more important the relationship becomes to them, they start trying to anticipate what he wants and be what they think he needs. And in the end, that person is in a relationship with a totally different woman from the one that he originally met. And it's almost like we become these chameleons that sort of, take on what we think other people want us to be. When you stay in your authentic self, you're so much more powerful, you're so much more real, and you're not going to have the people around you who are going to suck you dry. You're going to have actually people who value you and appreciate you.
I think that it's, and this is a broad sweeping statement, but I'll leap out there and make it. I think as we move on, like I talk about that this podcast and the work that I do in the world is very much aimed towards women in their 40s and beyond, as I call us. And it feels to me that as we move further through life, we do tend to become more authentic. We do tend to start to let go of that care, and I mean this in a positive sense, that care of what someone else thinks of us. I think we can still be rather hard on ourselves personally, but we have less concern about what you think of me. Do you see that sort of change starting to happen as we get a bit older and wiser?
I do and I don't. I mean, I have a sort of a different view about it. I find that the younger generation coming up, because I've worked with clients from 14 years till 87,
wow.
So I see like a broad spectrum of people. The younger ones don't seem to have the concerns of those in our, 40s and up group. I was working with a very beautiful, talented client who was in the entertainment industry, and, to look at her, absolutely stunning. You wouldn't know how old she was, talented, beautiful, wonderful, who still carried all those expectations and insecurities through. So I do think it's starting to change. But a lot of the time you have to get rid of all that inner crap, the inner critic, the voices from the past, the things that you learned. You've really got to get rid of that before you can fully be who you are. But on the other hand, I do think reaching a certain age, you do start to think, well, Simon, I'm just going to say what the hell I want. I don't really care. So yeah, I see both sides of that.
Yeah, there's sort of a balancing mix there. I think. I've got teenage children, and it's interesting because I can see on one side there's the I'm being completely me, and then there's those shades of, but will they like it? We oscillate. I don't think we ever just walk a completely straight line, but it's that self-awareness that you're talking about that allows us to get a stronger understanding of who we are, which is actually what you're talking about with this next point that I picked up on, is when you love and accept yourself, you draw people to you who love and appreciate who you are and share their dreams and values. So understanding that the idea of acceptance of ourselves and authenticity is a state that we want to move towards, both in our business and our life. How would you, or rather, not how would you, but would you say that there is particular actions that we can take that can make that journey easier for us, that journey towards love and acceptance?
Yep. I think the biggest issue that I see across the board with women is that they value their intelligence, they value their caring and their ability to love, they value their role at work. The biggest issue they have is they don't value or like or appreciate their bodies. And they get so caught up in that, lack of, not feeling thin enough, not feeling beautiful enough, not looking young enough, all of those different sorts of things. And the biggest healing that we as women need to do is in our relationship with our bodies. And until you really get that, you're not going to feel like an authentic, whole person, because you might be brilliant in your business, you might be a brilliant friend, a brilliant partner, and all of those sorts of things. But if you're feeling unworthy in your body, that comes across. It's in the energy around you. It's like a hole in your heart. You can't be confident if you're feeling that, you're not good enough and you're not worthy.
There's that. I think you struck a nerve here with me, and I'm sure with a lot of other people listening as well. And this is something that I've certainly had to look at. That almost feeling as though you're apologetic for who you are, for who you are physically. And this is an interesting sort of state that I've been looking at lately. That state of appreciating my body for what it has done for me in 47 years, and nurturing a couple of children and being strong. And I come from New Zealand farm stock, so I've got a pretty tough body, but there's more of it than there used to be, shall we say. And reaching that state where I have acceptance and appreciation and gratitude for my body, but also recognizing that I have a desire to help make it fitter and healthier, to move myself through the years to come. So really not beating myself up, but recognizing that there is room for, I'm not sure what the right word is, let's just use improvement, though it's not quite the word I want, but recognize that there is room for improvement because I want to be healthy and supple and all of those things as I grow older. So that body acceptance, I know Louise Hay talks about mirror work, and you are obviously qualified in this area. So if you could talk to perhaps that, and how else might we lessen the battle that some of us do certainly have with our physicality?
Well, using mirror work is one of the biggest ways to find out what you really think about and what you really think of yourself and the voice of your inner critic. And so what you actually do is you go to the mirror, you look into your own eyes and you use your own name. So, you try not to look at the wrinkles or the grey hair or anything like that. And I'll use my name for the purpose of this. Just say, Kerry, I love you and I approve of you exactly as you are right now. And it's about finding that love and acceptance for the whole package, the whole way you are. Because, if you're going to criticize yourself, you're going to end up hurting yourself. And this can come up in a number of ways. I mean, for example, I did a little bit of work with a professional photographer who was putting out a guide to how to have your business photos taken, on how to stop focusing on getting the photos that make you look glamorous and make you look beautiful, to get the mindset that I actually want to take a photo of me that's going to communicate to my clients, this is who I am, this is what I offer, this is what my energy is. And so many women will go for the glamour shot or the pretty shot that has nothing to do with their business. They don't really look trustworthy. They don't really look, empathetic. They don't really look professional. We get so caught up on how we look. And so the best way to work with that is just to accept your body is the way that it is now. You can't change that in an instant. What you can change is your attitude towards it. And the sad thing is, Angela, that we're taught that any sort of positive change for our body or our weight has to come from this really harsh, negative, critical, punishing perspective. And it's self-bullying. We know that bullying kills children now, that particularly with access to the internet. Yet we treat ourselves like that. And so a lot of the work that I do with women who have issues with their body or want to move past that self-consciousness is actually with hypnotherapy and other types of psychology work, is to actually get them to understand their relationship with their body and get their bodies to actually talk back to them. And the things that come out from that are absolutely amazing. So the best advice I can give anyone who's listening is you are the way you are right now. And if you want to make that better, do it with love. Because if you really love somebody, how do you treat them? You want them to eat well. You want them to be rested. You want them to feel healthy. You want them to feel loved and appreciated. And that can create such a beautiful feeling goal that's going to just lovely and naturally and organically pull you forward, instead of having this awful criticism and, bullying and punishment to try and push yourself forward. It doesn't. It's just going to create rebellion in the end and defiance, and you'll undo all of the good work that you've done.
I think this concept of self-bullying, that really resonates. I've certainly been a person in the past who has had a very active inner critic and have been incredibly downright nasty to myself in the way I used to speak to myself. And I mean, I would never talk to another person the way that I've spoken to myself. And I mean, even if we take that concept and the way that we're looking and speaking to ourselves about our bodies, if we then extrapolate that into, let's say, new things that we're trying in our businesses, and as we said before, it takes time to learn and to grow and to expand. And so if you might, let's take, for example, you might launch a new program and you have expectations and desires of how that program's going to go, and it doesn't turn out quite the way you expected. How do we best deal with ourselves there? Shall we beat ourselves up? Shall we tell ourselves how stupid and hopeless we are and how everyone else does it better, and et cetera, et cetera? If we do that, is that likely to encourage action to make things better, to try again? Absolutely not. It's just going to make you curl up in a corner and decide that it's all too hard. So
exactly.
That language, that self-talk needs to be positive and affirming. I don't mean like whitewashing it and saying, oh, look, I'm great, even, and that went fantastically. We're not talking Pollyanna. We're saying be real, but be real and gentle. with ourselves. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. You know, a lot of people say, I feel fat. But fat is not a feeling. It's not a feeling. It's judgment, it's anxiety, it's harshness, it's disgust, it's a whole lot of other things. It is not a feeling. And, you know, sexiness, confidence is an internal thing. It's not external. It doesn't come from out there. It all starts inside. And we know that by, you know, you might have a day where, you know, you put a dress on and you feel your mojo's working, you strut outside and you feel really good about yourself. You can put on the same dress a week later with nothing physically different, and the way you look at yourself will change everything. You'll think, you know, I'm a potato in a sack, I look fat, I look ugly, I look old, all of that sort of thing. And that energy and attitude you take out into the world, it's all generated inside. And we have the power to change that, and that's what's, you know, so great.
That's the exciting part, isn't it? When you become aware that you have that full responsibility for your life and your happiness, and that you can make the change. I think there's an area that you and I both have in common here, that we're both interested very much in the work of Byron Katie. And how she talks about those questions, and about questioning, is the story that we're talking or telling to ourselves, is it actually true? You know, it's a really powerful technique, and that the work can help, you know, alleviate real anxiety and that mental crap that we give ourselves. Is the work something that you utilize a lot in your business and life?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's that whole concept of, you know, when we argue with what is, we're going to be in a world of pain. So to use the example of what we were talking about before, if you're looking at your body and saying it shouldn't be that way, you're hurting yourself. It is the way it is. And the story you're telling yourself about your body is going to cause all of those emotions and all of that depression and all of that anxiety and all of that unhappiness. We are the way we are. The situation is the way the situation is. The only thing that we can change is how we see ourselves in that situation. And so, yes, all the time I use Byron's work. If I've got a client sitting there saying, nothing ever works out for me, the first thing I'm going to say is that true? Is it absolutely true that nothing ever works out for you? And they're going to say, well, no, some things work out for me. How do you feel when you have that thought that nothing ever works out for me? Well, I feel depressed and hopeless and frustrated, and why bother? So then we start to get into, well, tell me something that has worked out for you. And you go from there. So everything we tell ourselves is a story. And our subconscious mind reacts to that story as if it's true. That's the way our mind works. You know, if you've got a fear of spiders and you walk into a room and you see a little dark spot down by the skirting board, you're going to have the reaction. You'll have the physical and emotional reaction to a spider. And you might go running outside and send somebody in and saying, kill the spider. You know, and they go in and say, it was just a bit of wool off somebody's jumper. No, it hasn't changed your reaction. You're still having that stress response.
It's that lens through which we're seeing the world. That story that we've created is the lens through which we view everything. I love that. The thought that comes up there is, you know, don't believe everything you think.
Absolutely.
It's an interesting concept, isn't it? That idea that whatever we're thinking, we just believe.
Yeah.
We just take it as gospel. Well, that I failed. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, right, I failed. Obviously, I think I did, therefore I did. And we just don't question it. So I'll make sure in the show notes for this episode that I put a link through to the website about the work, in case people listening haven't come across it before, because it's very powerful, those questions that we can ask ourselves to really check reality. It's a big one. It's a big one.
And question it. You know, is that the best question you can ask any thought that you have? Is that true? And is that, you know, if you can say, oh, well, yes, it is, well, the next question is, well, is that absolutely true under all circumstances, past, present and future?
And there's no way that, it's very difficult to see a situation in which that would be true under all circumstances.
Exactly.
So And this is this idea of that self-awareness, which makes such an enormous difference. We can walk through life very unconscious, walk through our businesses very unconscious, but once we choose to start to wake up and to really develop that self-awareness, that's when we can affect enormous change, when we take that full responsibility, when we are kinder to ourselves, just the way that we would be to other individuals. That'll make the whole journey into writing a next chapter a lot more enjoyable, which is really, I think, what we're after. So tell me, this idea of emotional security that we seek actually needs to come from within. This is really the crux of it, isn't it? It's this backing yourself that I think the external validation that we can get, from someone telling us we've done a good job or whatever the case may be, feels good and there's nothing wrong with it. But if it's taken away, we don't want to fall into a heap. So it's that. So how does one, is there any other perspectives or any other philosophies or actions that you would share that help somebody build that foundation of self-trust?
Yes, the biggest one is that once you assume 100% responsibility for your own happiness and your own life, that is incredibly empowering and immensely freeing. And I know most people listening to this, including myself, when it was first said to me, you're 100% responsible for everything that happens to you, I felt like it was a slap in the face and that I was being, doubly victimized because something horrible had happened to me and now you're saying it was my fault. If we get back to what I talked about before, is that you can't control the situation. The only thing you can control is how you see and perceive yourself in that situation. That's what I'm talking about when I say 100% responsibility. Because nobody can make you happy. Nobody can make you happy. Nobody can make you anything. We always have a choice in how we choose to respond. And if you can assume that responsibility, then that can be amazingly freeing because you can say, okay, I'm in this really bad situation. How can I help myself? How can I talk kindly to myself? How can I support myself? What can I learn from that situation to try and make sure that, as much as possible, I'm not going to end up in this situation again? And then that helps you create that foundation, because how you see yourself is totally up to you. It's that story, it's those thoughts, it's those things that you say in every moment, all of the concepts that we've talked about, from questioning, if something's true, to, loving yourself, to doing your mirror work. It's not that you get to a certain point where you never have to do it anymore. It's an ongoing maintenance program. But the truth is, you're going to do it anyway, and usually you're going to be doing it from a very negative perspective. So it's really just raising that awareness. Am I being kind? Am I being fair? Am I taking responsibility? Am I waiting for someone or something to come along and make me happy? And if I'm in that position where I'm waiting for someone or something to come along and make me happy and successful, I'm completely powerless, because at any moment those things can just be ripped away.
So that concept can be, if we just pause as we come into the end of this wholehearted conversation, but if we just pause there and allow that concept to land, on one hand, as you said, it can initially feel like a slap in the face, but sometimes a slap in the face can actually wake us up and allow us to recognize the amazing freedom that is on the other side of that change.
Yes.
Of recognizing that, hey, if my husband comes home tonight and is a cranky shit, excuse my French, I can either buy into that and I can feel really bad about it, or I can pause and go, as a friend of mine says, not my circus, not my monkeys. I can actually choose to respond to that in a way that is far more empowering for me than to get pulled or sucked into that vortex, to believe the story of I've done something that might have triggered this, or whatever the case may be. That's perhaps not the world's best example, but it's the idea of being able to separate yourself from what's happening and choose the way you're going to respond rather than the way you're going to react to it.
Yes. Yeah. And the biggest thing that we as women do, and I see this time and time again, is we assume responsibility for everybody else's feelings. And we believe if they're unhappy, it has something to do with us. Or if they're angry, it has something to do with us. Or if a client didn't get the result that, the client wanted, that it has something to do with us. It's always a two-way process, and I'm very careful in how I screen my clients, because I'm not going to work with someone who wants me to fix them. It's not my job to fix somebody. It's my job to create the atmosphere and give the support and encouragement and the tools and the skills to enable them to create the life that they want to have. But if they don't do that, then that's not my responsibility. And we really need to be very clear where our responsibility begins and ends. And I think particularly in business, a lot of people over-deliver and undervalue themselves and think that if the client didn't get exactly what the client wanted, it's somehow their fault and they don't have the skills and they're not good enough. You've just really got to be clear about what your responsibilities are.
And that concept of everyone having complete responsibility for their life is something that perhaps we can, in some ways, teach to our clients as well. Because I've had similar experiences, concerns of over delivering and feeling responsible for other people's success. But there are, in business with what it is that I teach, but there are so many pieces to the puzzle. I can't possibly be, the magician that pulls them all together. Just what you're saying there as well. We play a role, but we do not, play the entire tune or write the whole book, so to speak.
Yes. And I think in a lot of ways, we're frightened to set boundaries. And if you're offering a service or a business, you have to be very clear up front exactly what you're delivering and what you're responsible for. For example, myself as a therapist, I have forms that I have my clients to sign so they understand exactly what their responsibilities are and what my responsibility is. So if you don't have those boundaries, and that gets back to valuing your time and yourself, you're going to have these ongoing issues with your clients because you haven't made it clear to them exactly what it is that you're giving them and exactly what they're responsible for.
Very, very good points, Kerry. My goodness, you should see all the notes that I've taken here. There's pages and pages of them, because so much gold in this conversation. This whole concept of empowering ourselves. As we said right at the beginning, these sort of approaches, these tools, these perspectives, they can be utilized in business and in life because the two are just so entwined. I will make sure that I've got some good links back to some of the resources that we've talked about. And of course, as with all of the episodes in the Next Chapter podcast, there will also be a resource download from yourself, and we'll be looking within that particular resource about powerful negotiation and communication, which is certainly going to be helpful for us in setting those boundaries in business and in life. So thank you for that. Kerry, your insights are fabulous, so I really appreciate the time you've taken here today. And if our listeners would like to come and find out more about you, where can we find you online?
You can find me at my website, which is www.lovetransformslc.com.
And that's fabulous. And how about on any of the social media platforms? Do you fly?
I do have a Facebook page for Love Transforms LC, so you can find me there as well.
Great. Now, I'll make sure I put those links on the page as well. But for anyone who is feeling as connected to Kerry as I certainly have been for quite a long time now, very much encourage you to go along and explore the types of services and insights that Kerry has on her website and the very inspirational post that comes through from Facebook. So once again, Kerry, thank you so much. I look forward to continuing this conversation with you another day.
Thanks, Angela. Absolute pleasure as always.
Wonderful. And thank you for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to tune into this show. I know there's many, many ones that you could be listening to, and I'm really enjoying bringing these gorgeous speakers to you to help you enrich your next chapter, business and life. If I could ask you my listeners a small favour as well. I would love it if you're enjoying these interviews and conversations to pop into iTunes and to leave a review for the Next Chapter podcast. It certainly helps make this show more visible, and therefore more women who really need to hear these messages and tune into these conversations will be able to find us. So you can find that on my website under podcast. There's instructions there about how to very simply leave us a review. Your feedback is really important to me, and I appreciate you taking the time. So thanks again for tuning in, and have a lovely day, and I'll talk to you again on the next episode. Take care. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Pop over to angelaraspis.com to subscribe to the show and leave a review. And whilst you're there, you can also enjoy valuable free resources, including show notes and downloads, along with the Next Chapter community, where you can connect with other wholehearted women on the same journey as you. We'd love to welcome and support you as your next chapter unfolds. See you next time.